to do that, and I just like totally forgot because that was really good.
I have a hard copy here, so I can help this one.
Good time?
It is time.
Okay. This work session for the city of Frostburg is called to order. We'll move on to call of the roll.
Commissioner Donnie Carter.
Here.
Commissioner Nina Forsythe.
Here.
Commissioner Kevin Grove.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Ritchie.
Here.
Mayor Todd Logsdon.
Present. Okay. So dive right into meeting topics then. So item 3 on the agenda, item 3A is the proposed new ordinance, the new drinking water ordinance. So Mrs. Jones.
So we have been working on some proposed revisions to the water ordinance, some tied to the planned transition to monthly billing, as you all expressed approval for in the previous work session, and others just as a matter of, through experience since this ordinance was passed in 2020, looking for ways that we could improve the function and some of the timeliness of some of these issues. So attached to the work session agenda was the revised version drafted by Michael Cohen as well as a red line version. And what I tried to do in the paper that I gave you today is just kind of summarize some of the highlights of the major changes to bring these to your attention. So if there's anything that you disagree with or recommend other changes, we can get those to Michael Cohen before we present it in a public setting, to do the first reading and have a public hearing. So I'll just run through some of these quickly. First is in the definition of what is considered to be a delinquent account. In the current ordinance, it defines this as an account that's unpaid 90 days after the billing date. So we propose changing this instead to being based on the due date, and it would be an account that is unpaid 50 days after the due date. Most bills will be due around 30 days from when they're issued. We don't anticipate wanting to add penalties as soon as the due date passes. We recognize that there's issues with mail and whatever, so this is a leeway. 50 days gets it to within like a week before the next bill would be generated. That's where the 50 days came from. There is in section 6-5, there is a requirement that each lot of record have a separate water meter. We have a number of properties in town where they've been grandfathered in. There is not a separate water meter for perhaps a duplex. The current ordinance says everyone has to be in compliance by 2030. We realize that that is a challenging deadline, so we're just pushing that out another 10 years. As far as meter reading frequency, it currently states that each meter would be read either quarterly or monthly. We would recommend making it a more general statement, just saying that the meters will be read on a schedule as approved by the mayor and council. That way, if there was ever any change in the desired schedule, they wouldn't have to go through an ordinance change.
Read each meter.
As far as the penalties for people who fail to provide city access to their meter, the current code says if we don't have access to your meter once a year, you can get a $200 penalty. The current draft of the ordinance brings this to within 180 days of written notice. Michael Cohen advised us that's too long, so we would propose making that to 90 days. So when we send out a bill indicating, we need access to your meter, if in 90 days you fail to make an appointment so we have access to the meter, we could add a $200 penalty.
Yeah, I think
to an account.
That's a good change.
So 90 days seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Under the leak adjustment policy, under the ordinance 2020-02, it's written as once every 10 years. Partly because we are changing to monthly billing, the leak adjustment would still be linked to one billing period, so each bill amount will be smaller. So we would recommend changing that leak adjustment frequency to once every 4 years. So the leak adjustment for a potential customer would be approximately, a third, assuming the leak had gone on the whole time, but it's allowing them the opportunity to have that more frequently. So, if you have any feelings about any of these, we can discuss. The leak adjustment calculation right now, we look at the average consumption of the most recent 12 months for a particular address. We do have instances though where someone has purchased a property and we don't have 12 months of history
With that
for that.
particular.
So when you're calculating an average, sometimes it can be skewed if there were several months with no consumption or not in the period that they have. So the recommendation is that we would add clarification. So it's based on average consumption over the 12-month period, and if they had not owned it for 12 months, average consumption of 38,000 gallons, or their actual metered consumption during their period of ownership. There's also a provision in the ordinance so that additional leak adjustments can be allowed for multi-tenant commercial properties or multifamily units. Right now, the ordinance states that the mayor and council may grant additional leak adjustments, and it's undefined as to the number. And we did have one of those recently that you approved. So the revision would be that the city administrator could grant one additional leak adjustment within a 4-year period, and it would still apply to a separate unit, so you couldn't have a leak adjustment in the same unit of a multi-unit. But it would allow the city administrator to make that judgment as opposed to having to bring it to the mayor and council.
Now, would the provision still be in there for the mayor and council to do, and I'm just gonna use my building as an example. I pay 25 EDUs a year, I have 20 units, hotel rooms and stuff. I've never used a leak adjustment just for that. But I could have a leak in any of those apartments at any time. And I think we need to build in some kind of other thing too, because there's a lot of buildings like mine that are big. And, every month I could have a leak in a different unit, and, it could cost me thousands and thousands of dollars. I had a leak 3 or 4 months ago that cost my bill was double what it normally is. But I think we need to look a little bit, even if we just put a thing in there that any additional would have to be approved by the mayor and council. I think something needs to be in there just in case, because it's, just up and down Main Street, how many buildings have 7, 8, 9 units?
So in addition to this, city administrator may grant one additional leak adjustment within a 4-year period. You want to add something about,
I think if you're looking, definitely if you're looking at, like, take, I don't know how many meters they have out at, like, the one there at the end of Welsh Hill, but, there's 50-some units there. And 4 or 5 different buildings. Like, if they just got 1 meter, one building could have a leak, and, they could have a leak in every building sometime during that 4-year period, but only be allowed to, put in for one. And I don't think it's fair for people that are paying significantly more surcharges to say that we're looking at you the same way we're looking at a single-family home or a 2-family home or something.
So could we then just take the language of the two and merge them together so that it would read something like, start with the new language first, the proposed change. City administrator may grant one additional leak adjustment within X period, whatever we decide. And then, a second sentence after that, mayor and council may then grant additional leak adjustments as they see fit or whatever. Case by case, right. So, provide staff the ability to just do the one, then if there's multiple, if something happens more than one in a given period, then it would come before mayor and council, but allow staff to do the first one.
if we want to equalize it to single-family residences, could we do one leak adjustment within a 4-year period per EDU? It's a problem though with the ones that only have 1 meter per multiple units.
That does get in, and I think we still need to leave the the property owner still needs to prove that it was a different unit that, you know,
Yeah,
something. So
I
I think
think that
maybe
it-
that's why, you know, doing what Todd says, at least they'd have to bring in the proof and say, hey, you know, this one was,
but the proof is like in the language of the ordinance. It does say to be approved, you have to bring in these certain pieces of paper that
Okay.
show
Oh,
that,
okay.
yeah.
And just from a protection of the city, I don't know that every time there's a leak, there's an obligation of the city to grant relief to a customer. There is some burden of ownership, at which point the city cannot be expected
right.
to provide a concession, but I can see the reasoning in making it not as strict.
As an aside, on this subject, when Eden and I were at the Maryland Rural Water Conference back in May, I sat in on a presentation where a private company offers insurance at the cost to the customer, and it can either be optional or mandatory, but it's a couple dollars a quarter that would cover leaks and insulate the city from that, and also protect the customer from the leaks.
Is it similar to what the power companies offer?
Something like that, yes. So I'll be going to another conference in a couple weeks, and I was planning on getting more information about that. And if that's something you're interested in, this may become a moot point.
Sure.
So,
And we do hope that by having frequent billing for the residential customers, that they will not experience such large leaks.
Right, yes.
Or detect them sooner. Now, for those who are already billed monthly, it doesn't change your circumstance at all. On multiple units, that can still happen.
So for now, shall we leave the language as is until, or no, until we get more information about the insurance?
for the conference.
When is that?
The conference?
Yes.
In a week and a half.
Oh,
So,
So we could still revise it for the first presentation of the ordinance
Yeah.
to allow the city administrator to do one, and that the mayor and council may approve additional on a case-by-case basis,
yeah. and then-
undefined as to any kind of limitation, similar to the way it is now.
okay, yeah.
And then we could amend it if needed.
Yeah, amended at
On
the
the
second
second reading.
Mhm.
You could do both actions, go with the insurance policy and then
Amend
change
the ordinance to reflect that, yeah.
before it's adopted.
Yeah.
So timing could work out well on that.
Okay. So, general agreement about that? Okay,
Okay.
let's do that.
Moving on then to tampering, which is under section 6-8. There's a statement right now that would allow the city, if there is evidence of tampering, to terminate the water service and require payment based on a volumetric charge. And we just want to simplify it and say the city can terminate the water service.
Because if we can prove that there is tampering, it also becomes a police matter, and there's fines associated on that side as well, so.
And determining what the correct consumption was when it was tampered with makes it difficult to just say, well, what is the double of the volumetric charge?
Sure.
And it's very difficult to prove tampering to begin with, so.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, the next section is going to be what I believe will draw the most attention from the public, and this has to do with water shutoffs. So, again, the applicability of being subject to water shutoff is dependent on how a delinquent account is defined. So again, we've already talked about changing it from number of days past a billing date to past a due date. So currently, when someone hits the qualification to be notified of potential water shutoff, the city is required to mail them 2 letters, a certified letter and a letter in regular mail. We would like to remove that requirement to send a special mailing so that there is not a special letter required. Each bill would have a statement in the billing message, failure to pay, past due balances by the due date, make the account eligible for water shut-off. This is similar to how other municipalities handle it. You don't get a special notice, you don't pay your bill. Occasionally, on a schedule, the water department would be notified of which accounts are subject to shut off, and the customers would have their water shut off without a special mailing.
Isn't one of the reasons though why we wanted to give notice was, I mean, there's a problem with shut-offs and turning the water back on in and of itself, right? So, I mean, we really want to minimize that.
Unfortunately, history has shown that for many customers,
Doesn't make a difference?
the only time they pay the bills is if they get a shut-off notice. That's not always the case. And again, with more frequent bills, smaller bills, we're anticipating it will be easier for customers to stay caught up.
It should be.
And you did say that there's an automatic payment thing in there. Like, can't you set it up that they
You
automatically?
can, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the customers can enroll to have their payment withdrawn by the city on the due date. So that is the recommendation in this ordinance. The other major change is right now, on the back side, under the current policy, when the city notifies a customer via these letters, their account is subject to shut off, the city adds a penalty. The penalty is 10% of the total balance due, or $20, not less than $20. So the proposed change would be that we would not add any additional fee to the account unless we actually have to turn it off. So when the list is sent to the water department, and then the shut-off fee would be added to the account balance. So that is a change in this respect. This benefits the customer, because when they're already behind on a bill, and then you add a 10% penalty on some of these accounts, that's a significant dollar amount. And then we charge them another $20 to turn them back on if they do get turned off. So this just feels more
Are we still keeping the turning back on fee?
Yeah.
I would recommend having that instead of the shut-off fee because that makes more sense. If you want your water turned back on, you pay your bill and you pay $20.
That's kind of what it is anyway, no matter what. Because
It
they're
is-
only
it-
getting
It's just the
the
wording, it's just the
Okay,
wording that
okay.
changes.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess the income to the city is the same. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
It just makes more sense to the customer to, why do I have to pay $20 to get my service discontinued?
I'm paying you money for you to do something that I don't want you to do.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Elaine, but if they're getting like the utility assistance, and we're adding the fee on when they ask to be turned back on, it would mess up calculating the total
Because the assistance only applies to the,
past, so we'd have to predict.
In another circumstance, if an account has their water turned off for non-payment, if you require that turn-on fee to only be added if they've paid their bill, so let's say they pay online, so then they would have had to pay the balance online, and then we have to process that, and then we'd have to add the $20 fee, and then they would have to pay that.
okay,
And
I
it
see
feels
it,
like
yeah.
it's an unnecessary
Step, yeah.
step.
I understand that, that makes sense,
Okay.
yeah. So,
Well,
process-wise, it makes sense, it's just the wording seems.
could we just call it a reconnection fee? Like
Yeah.
in the ordinance or something, or in the billing? Or does that matter?
But it's applied before the water's reconnected.
Well, they're paying, yeah, it's applied before it's reconnected, but it's insinuating that they're going, if they're
Yeah.
coming in to pay it, they want it reconnected anyway.
Yeah, I think you could do that. It has to be paid, you know, you could, you charge it the same amount, at the same time that you're charging this shut-off fee, but just rename it reconnection fee.
Semantics. If a property, let's just say, property is a rental property, it's for sale with a realtor. The tenant is responsible for the water bill. The water gets shut off because the tenant doesn't pay. The landlord, the owner of the property doesn't pay to get it turned back on.
But that's not the way our water bills are. Our water bills are the responsibility of the owner.
Right, but if the owner's like, I'm not turning it back on, and then it goes to closing, and then it's messy from charging a reconnection. I mean, I guess it's not, I don't know.
If it's gonna screw anything up, just leave it as it is. I see what Nina's saying, just to kind of clarify that this isn't really a fee for us to shut your water off, it's a fee for us to turn your water back on.
That needs to be paid. Yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be paid before you get it turned back on.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we're all saying the same thing, though.
Mhm.
It ends up being the same thing.
Yeah.
So if it's gonna cause a huge headache to change the language, maybe we think about that particular part, and if we're gonna have to amend something later anyway, if we think of better language, we can amend that, and if not, we'll just leave it the way it is.
If it was called the shut-off penalty instead of the shut-off fee, would that be more palatable?
It would make more sense, I think.
Penalty, okay.
Okay, moving on then. There's a section for appeals for water shutoffs. The current ordinance says that the commissioner must approve or may approve the payment plans. In practice, we have been approving the payment plans within the finance department, particularly once COVID hit and there was just so many of them. And we have continued offering payment plans.
And we restructured it, so it's a lot more by the
I
book.
mean, it's a signed agreement, so we would just like to formalize it in the ordinance, officially giving me or my designee, meaning if I'm not here, Trevor can do the payment plans, rather than it having to go through the commissioner.
Yeah, it's good.
So. And as far as interest on unpaid balances, the ordinance right now says that if it's not paid by its due date, in practicality, we do not assess a penalty the day after the due date. There is some leeway because of anticipating mail, so we would not add a penalty unless it's 25 days after the bill due date, which again, transition to monthly billing, that means within a few days of when the next bill's coming out, interest would be added. And the final clarification is just in our definition of how we calculate Frostburg dwelling equivalent units. Right now, the ordinance just says it shall be rounded up. We just want to clarify it's going to be rounded up if the decimal is .50 or higher. So, and not to be picky, but just to make things clear.
Yeah.
Before we move on from this, if we could go back to the discontinuance of the notification. I just want to talk a little bit more about that to make sure. So a customer gets their bill on X date, on October 1st, right? And it's due on November 1st, or it's due whenever, I don't know. And it gets delinquent. So we said we want to discontinue the certified mail, but you're putting something in the bill to clarify that, or there's some kind of notice in the regular bill that states that?
So if you can visualize your utility bills, the calculation information is on the left-hand side, and there's that billing message on the right-hand side. That is the space where we would add another sentence that just indicates failure to pay the previous balance by the due date makes the account subject to shut off.
And plus, in that time, they'd receive at least a at least another
One
bill,
more
possibly two other bills
Yeah.
that they would see that they're
That's
accumulating.
fine, and I'm not opposed to this. I just want to clarify that there will be something written that they will know that this can happen.
It will be there.
Okay.
The one concern is that people do not read the information on their bills.
Mhm.
In some instances, even when we send the certified letters, we will have people who do not claim their certified letter because they know that's what it is.
Mhm.
So the city's spending, between $6 and $7 doing certified mailings
Just for it to come back.
for the formality of it to come back and not be claimed, which is why we also send one regular mail. And we do track, what mail is returned to make sure people have been notified. But then we have instances, okay, if it's a rental property, the owner gets the original bill always, but they could have their tenant set up to get a copy. So then you could have 2 certified letters going out, per property or more. The other alternative is to continue to send some kind of a shut-off notice if you're not comfortable with it just being stated on the bill.
Something that I don't think would require a lot of extra effort is just get like a red rubber stamp that says past due balance subject to shut off and put it on their next bill. Or maybe subject to shut off or something. And just rubber stamp the envelope in the bill.
So
It just means that when we're printing 2,500 bills,
you
So-
have to
we
pull
have
the
to
bill.
sort through the bills to see who gets that special stamp.
So now, so whenever bills are generated currently and sent out, do we hand stuff envelopes here, or is that something that's done outside?
We have a machine
Okay,
that folds and stuffs.
I see.
Yeah.
And the current process for doing shut-off letters, we have a report that we export from our billing system, but then it's a manual process of reviewing the
And I know
accounts, doing a mail merge.
And I know I saw that report recently, but you're gonna have to ballpark a number for me. In a given period, how many shut-off notices do you think we send? More than 100?
We do shut-offs right now, and we separate them into 2 groups.
Okay.
Between our billing. We do each group twice a year, and we're probably sending out 40 to 60 in every group.
Okay.
So you multiply that out through the year.
Mhm.
As far as ones that actually get turned off, it's less.
Mhm.
So like of the list that we sent out a couple weeks ago, there was maybe 50 on the
That's
list.
about
And
what I was
as
thinking.
of
It was
the
about
end of
2
the day
pages.
today, we have less than 10 that will actually have their water turned off.
Okay.
Some, we offer a payment, we call it a courtesy, minimum payment. Like we see sometimes people are making partial payments, but just not enough to keep up.
Mhm.
We don't send them a shut-off letter. We say, you need to pay this much by this date.
Mhm.
And others will see, there's been no attempt at payment in 6 months,
Yeah.
so they have to go on the shut-off list.
I mean, I'm not opposed to this. I am a little apprehensive of saying they're not gonna get some kind of special notice, but I'm not 100% against it.
Especially since we're transitioning from one.
Yeah, and like we said, the bills are gonna be significantly lower anyway.
Yeah.
What we can do is let it go like this for a little while, see how it's happening. I mean, if all of a sudden, we're shutting off 75 or 80 people every time we turn
Yeah.
around, maybe we need to relook at
Maybe,
it.
that's
But
fine.
if it's something that people catch on to and,
Yeah.
So.
So go with this, and then if we notice a significant increase in shut-offs, then maybe look at how to notify. Yeah, that's fine.
So Elizabeth, is it correct that if the ordinance is worded this way, we would always have the option of sending additional documentation, but we would not be required to do so?
Okay, yeah, that's fine, that's fine.
And within our billing system, we can generate special shut-off notifications. It looks more like a regular bill, but it's something more automated than the way we do it now with letters and letterhead.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, that's fine. And I mean, I think most utilities do it that way. The gas company, if you get a shut-off notice, it looks like a regular bill, but it's printed on a different color paper or something like that. maybe, something.
But if you have any other suggested changes or edits, I need to send off to Michael.
I don't think so. I think the changes are good.
Now, in the draft ordinance that he presented, we had some language in there about the leak adjustment, like an application period versus when the documentation will be provided. And Trevor and I have talked, and it's just too complicated. We just want it to go back the way it is. So in the version that we presented in the ordinance, I will go back to the prior
Okay,
version.
okay. Anything else on that?
I don't think so.
We good? It's been a half hour and we did the first thing on the agenda.
It was well worth it.
All right, so item B then, so solid waste ordinance, this is Beth.
Good evening, Commissioners. So Jay Hovatter, our code enforcement officer, has been with us for a little over 2 years now. And he has brought to my attention that the way that our code enforcement regulations are written in the city code make it difficult for him to do his job. I mean, the way that they currently are is pretty bare bones, and I think that that's on purpose, but there are things that keep coming across our desks over and over and over again, so we felt it was time to start preparing some text amendments. So the one I have for you this month is in regard to the storage of solid waste. And there will be a more robust text amendment, many more pages than this one, coming to you next month. But we're starting small with this storage of solid waste ordinance. So the section 5-8A, nothing is changing about that. That is our current ordinance. Nothing's changing about it. Part B, the exceptions. These are things that we get complaints about that are often unfounded, and it really is burdensome on staff to follow up on complaints. So the list here: compost piles less than 4 feet in height and 6 feet in diameter at ground level, 30 feet or more from any dwelling, 4 feet or more from adjoining properties, storm debris within 30 days following a storm event. There have been multiple instances where a tree comes down in someone's yard and they leave it piled there for a year, and you send them a letter about it and they say, well, a storm knocked that over last winter.
Right.
Construction, residue, and debris during or for 14 days following completion of work. This is one that we see a lot. Somebody renovates their kitchen and they leave the cabinets out in their backyard for months and months and months. That's just not appropriate. And fallen leaves, tree needles, tree fruit, similar vegetation. We get a lot of complaints about walnuts and chestnuts in town, and we can't really do a whole lot about that, so we definitely wanted to spell that.
Trees are littering.
I know. I mean, we get these complaints more often than you'd realize. Recyclables, we specifically wanted to address accumulations of recycled materials, stipulating that they must be stored in leak-proof containers, just like regular garbage would. And then 6 here. This is relating to undeveloped land. So we are stating that grasses, weeds on undeveloped land may be maintained at a height higher than 12 inches. Right now, if it's a developed property, all vegetation needs to be 12 inches or less. On a vacant parcel, we're more lenient with that. We just wanted to codify that.
With not a vacant residential lot in town, though. Just
No, undeveloped, the punctuation I think needs to be changed. Undeveloped agricultural, that comma after undeveloped I think needs to go away. because, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
you
there could
don't-
be undeveloped
Yeah, 'cause you-
land that's
Right, there could
in a
just be a
residential.
vacant lot.
Right, like in our subdivisions or
Right,
something
or
like
somebody,
that.
somebody owns 2 lots and doesn't feel like cutting the grass on one lot.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah. You got that comment.
Okay.
yes. So, this list of exceptions is the only change to that. That just makes it a little bit easier for us to, address complaints as they come in. And these are some of the more common ones that we receive.
I see what you're saying there, Bethany, about like the lots in Pritchard Farm that are subdivided, but like off in the distance. You don't want them to have to maintain a lawn there, so.
But like, I mean, I don't know, for instance, the lot there at the corner of Bell Street, I think it's Bell and College Avenue.
Right.
You know, you don't want 3 feet of grass there.
Right.
We'll figure something
Yeah.
out.
And I mean, that lot in particular, that had previously been developed, so,
Well,
we'll workshop
maybe
this point
You can
here.
almost maybe say, throw in something in there that, you know, have never been connected with, or aren't yet connected to utilities or something like that.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah,
Some of the, most of the lots in town
right.
have heads there somewhere.
Alrighty, so I'm happy to answer any other questions you have about this. This will come back to you for a second reading, public
This will be-
hearing next month.
Yeah, so it'll be introduced in September and then it would come back with the water ordinance in October.
anything else on that? Okay. Moving on then, item C, our favorite CSO.
Okay. So, for 10A, there's currently 4 change orders. 3 and 4 were the change orders that we talked about that will end up costing us money. They are a scope change and a financial ask. We've already approved them. That is the retaining wall at Mountain Ridge and the change in the pipe below McCullough. 1 and 2 are change orders that we had to make in the field because they came up as stuff was going on. We just pivoted, made the corrections, got them to work, had the state look at them, good to go. Financially, for 1 and 2, we pulled the costs for those out of different budget line items across the project. So we will not be asking for more money for 1 and 2. However, we do have to approve the scope change for those projects. I won't be giving you guys those change orders to say, we changed the scope, the cost was 0 until the end of the project, because all that comes out at the end of the project from the budget line items. So I will be bringing these back up to you in 6 months. But for now, they were on there just because we want to be crystal clear with everything, because there was some confusion about what was going to cost us money, what would not cost us money, and what was going to go into the project. But as of now, the total amount that we will be asking for, already have asked for the contingency for phase 10A was change order 3 and 4, and it was about $114,000, which was budgeted for in the contingency of that project. So for now, you don't really have to worry about 1 and 2, but it will come up later, and they should be a financial 0.
So it won't be coming up next week.
Correct. Yeah, that was my fault. The reason it's on here is my fault.
Thank you.
Yeah, not this. Yeah. So while we are on that topic, construction update for the easement access. The pipe that we are shifting, there's 6 houses on McCullough below Mountain Ridge that are butted up against our easement. Over the years, assuming people bought the property, thought nothing was ever going to happen with it, and there's little gardens back there, there's little trees people have planted. One guy actually ran an electric line through there to where I believe he was plugging in an RV maybe. So we're going to send out,
That's probably Doug Lemmer.
Probably. So we're going to send out letters tomorrow. There's about 3 weeks until that construction is set to start, and then there will actually be more buffer before we get to those 6 houses. But we're going to send out letters tomorrow that say, hey, we're going to be coming through. It's going to look like it's coming through your backyard. It is actually our easement. If you have stuff in there, here's your couple-week notice to move it. Whatever we move out of there, we will not be paying to put back because it's on our property. I just wanted to give you all that update before people start calling and saying, you're tearing up my backyard, what's going on? It's our property. Yeah, yeah. They'll be knocking on your door.
Walk down the
Only in
street.
my house.
Below Mount Ridge. So,
Apparently set up a lemonade stand.
yeah, so I just wanted everyone to be aware of that we do in fact own the property. We just acquired there was one property in the middle that was holding us up that we did not have an easement on, and we just acquired it. But they're aware of it. It's just these last 6 homeowners are gonna think to themselves, granted, we're gonna give them warning, but they're gonna think, well, you tore out my garden, you need to pay to put it back. It's like, well, your garden is on our property, so. We're gonna approach it nicely, obviously. We'll lead with the carrot, not
We
the
let
stick.
you use parking
Yeah.
on our property for so
Yeah.
many years.
Yeah. While we are on that topic, for Phase 10A and 10B on Washington Street, the plan is to run sidewalks down both sides of Washington Street. We own the right-of-way and the property on both sides of Washington Street, and at one time there were sidewalks that ran down both sides of Washington Street that we own. Same thing, we're gonna give people plenty of notice. I'm gonna talk about it in every CSO update, but people are gonna think to themselves, you're taking 4 feet of my yard. How can you do that? It's our property. So I have the plat sitting in my office if someone wants to look at it, but
Plus, you're getting sidewalks,
yeah.
and
So
you don't have to mow them.
yeah, I actually had that conversation with a woman today. That's what sparked this conversation now, because she thought we were taking a portion of her yard. We own the right-of-way, we own the access, it's our property, and we're gonna have, you can actually see, if you ride through Washington Street, you can look in front of some of the houses and say to yourself, there was a sidewalk there at one time. And it's because they're still there, they're just buried under 6 to 8 inches of topsoil that has run off the road. So that's just a little
That's
update.
gonna affect Donald's way of little steps, right?
Yeah, which we're, yeah, that guy, yeah. So, but that's just, so everyone is aware of that when the questions start coming.
A lot of this came from when the new paving came in on there, they never milled anything down, and that happened for years in the city. No milling happened.
Yeah, which was an effort to try and,
Save money.
yeah,
Yes.
which, I mill everything now, but I'm paying for that now, but,
Well, with kids walking to school, I mean.
yeah,
it makes
and
sense.
that,
Yeah.
3 o'clock, that is the busiest street in town, I
It is.
guarantee it.
and that was the original concept with bringing the sidewalks back, is that if we're gonna get this grant funding and this money, we should make these sidewalks
Yeah.
work with the funding that we're getting. So that's that one. That's more of an update than anything. That's a long-winded conversation for not asking for any money for that point.
Heads up.
So that's all I have on that one. So I can start rifling through the next one.
You wanna not ask for money on the next one too?
Unfortunately. That should be the,
Let me tell you your number.
I actually have it.
Okay.
I memoried. This is item D under council meeting topics. Mechanic Street parking lot change order number 3. This is the time and material ticket for the project, which is all of the unforeseen conditions that came up during the project. While tearing down the buildings and excavating, basically uncovered a dump. So we had to go in and remove, I forget how many tandem axles of bad material and bring in new. But all that wasn't an original part of the contract.
And a well.
And a well, yeah, we
Oh,
found a
never
well.
mind.
Yeah, I have the pictures of it if you guys want to see them. So that number, after everything, came out to $34,584.44. So that's to cover all of the extra work that Belt had to put in. Now, on top of that, Belt originally budgeted for 4 construction entrances. They only built 1 and used 1. So we're expecting a $7,000 credit for the 3 construction entrances they didn't put in. So I'm going to ask for $34,584.44, which presumably will come out of ARPA funds, but we should be getting $7,000 back, which will bring that number down. If there are any questions, if anyone wants to see the actual time and material ticket too, I have that and we can go over it.
It's attached.
And
Okay.
one thing with that lot that I noticed when I spoke to Liz about,
It's already taken care
all
of.
was taken care of.
Yep.
And the property up above, there was no bump stop
Yeah.
to keep cars in the wintertime from coming into our new fence.
Yeah, and we were worried about that and worried about actually snow removal pushing into our
Yeah.
neighborhood. So, yeah, it came up a couple times.
So what are you gonna put, I saw it has no parking signs there, so you're doing something tomorrow on that?
Yeah, we're gonna do curb.
Okay.
Yep. So that's
I
that
listen
one.
to you, Commissioner.
The rest of these are all pretty good news, except for F, but that's kind of rough. So E, the bid awards for our little CSO projects that we talked about at PACE. This is North Grant and Center Extended. We opened those today. North Grant came in at $370,130. Center Extended came in at $376,515. Our total grant for that project was $780,000. I think some quick math, that's 645. So we're well below our grant funding.
Same bidder.
Yeah, same bidder, it's Braddock for both. Yeah, so they were a little below, the average for both of those contracts, based on all the bidders, was a touch over 400. So they're within the ballpark, and a good low number, presuming they can do it a little bit cheaper because they're already in Frostburg doing work for us. So those numbers make sense. We are going to approach CDBG and just say, hey, our bids came in about $35,000 under our grant amount. Are we able to use that last little bit of grant amount of money? If not, we just give it back. But as of right now, we are well below our grant money.
Well, just hang on to it until it's all done, because there'll be a change order.
I can promise. Yeah, so,
Redirect it to Mechanic Street.
yeah. So, those are both good numbers. I'm really happy with those numbers. I'm happy with Braddock. We've worked really well with them. So next week I would ask for a motion in a second to approve those, and we can start the process of cutting that paperwork loose. It's very similar to our MDE ones, where there's lots of approvals and paperwork before any work actually starts, but we're going to try to do a groundbreaking and start buying some stored materials before the end of the fiscal year, just because we have to do that to keep some of our financial obligations with CDBG. But those numbers were good ones. Number F, this is the Centennial Street stuff we were talking about. So, the low bid for that work came in at $65,493.09. The total paving budget for this year was $200,000. The paving project came in at $154,000. So, we basically have an overrun in the paving budget if we accept this bid, of about $10,000. So we would have to make up that $10,000 somewhere. Liz and I are confident that we can do it by pulling out of some other budgets and redirecting funds, doing budget amendments. But I'm assuming we want to stay away from ARPA for this one, right? Yeah. So we're confident we can make the budgets work. If we have to do budget amendments, take $5,000 from parking lot maintenance, $5,000 from salt, and put it in the Centennial paving for now. That street, the amount of milling and paving that'll go into that street is about equivalent to 4 or 5 of our usual streets. That's why it's so much, because it's such a long stretch. But it'll all be milled, paved. It'll be a Cadillac by the time it's done, too, because those people have been put out long enough.
I've been very patient.
Yeah.
And Columbia Gas has given you their assurance that it ain't happening anytime soon.
Correct.
Okay.
It might never happen. So,
And we talked about it the other day too, and if it does happen, they're gonna pave the whole, repave the whole thing anyway, so.
Better be a Cadillac.
Right.
yeah.
So it'll be done this fall then?
Oh yeah, it'll be done. We'll approve it next week, presuming you guys are okay with it, and then I'll cut the contract. It was AmeriSeal, by the way. The guy who did our paving contract this year. I'll cut him loose Wednesday, and then he was thinking he would probably be able to start the following Monday. So this should be done within a month. So. All right, and then the last one, this one's all good, is G, which is the bid award for the construction of the storage building for MDE Bureau of Mines. This is the foundation part of the package. The number that came in, it was Winter Brothers Construction. It came in at $103,201.56. Remember, we are not paying for that. Bureau of Mines is paying for that. We will handle the contract, we will pay the contractor, and then we will invoice Bureau of Mines. So this is for the earthwork, the foundation, and the utility tie-ins, and then we will have a prepackaged metal building put on top of that. So we'll have a prepackaged metal building contract that'll come up in about 2 weeks, and then we'll approve that at the next council meeting. So
Is it on land the city owns?
Nope.
that's the next
So
one.
that's my topic.
And it's for storage for the Bureau of Mines?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because we are, per our lease with them, we are obligated to provide them outdoor covered storage, which we had in our street department lot, and they agreed to do away with that building under the assumption that we would move forward with something else, and this is that something else. So it worked out well because it got them out of our fencing, so they were happy, and it gives us our space back in our laydown yard. So it's kind of the best for everybody. So the next part will be Elizabeth.
The item H then.
So this may not make a lot of sense, but this is what the state of Maryland wanted to do, so this is what we're doing.
Definitely won't make sense.
So the university owns the mud lot directly across from the Bureau of Mines, the Armory. Now the state of Maryland pays us over $80,000 a year to lease the Armory for office space, so it's obviously in our best interest to keep them as happy tenants. That's a lot of money for the city for office space that we wouldn't otherwise need. So to Hayden's point, they needed additional storage. The mud lot is a gigantic asphalt lot across the street on Water Street there that is not used. So we approached the university about leasing a portion of that lot. The leased area footprint has all been drawn up by Bennett Brewer and Associates, and we are working through a lease agreement now. So the state is going to let the city lease the property so the city can lease the property back to the state. Sorry, Elaine.
With real dollars being transferred?
No real dollars, no value.
Just like all just the same amounts, just
Yeah.
put it in this column and then put it in that column.
Yeah. So I have a almost.
You don't want a little pass-through fee?
I have an almost.
Can we add a $20 water circulation?
So who really owns the building when it's done?
The university.
Their building,
So if the university does not approve of our use, if MDE were to leave and we said we're going to use this for storage, the university might approve it. If the city said we're going to use this for carnival acts on every Tuesday night, the university may not approve it and could kick us off, terminate the lease, and the building reverts to their ownership.
So it's never our app.
Correct.
But we're also not paying.
We're not paying to build it either, though.
It's
Yeah, we're not
bizarre.
paying.
So we don't have to insure it.
I'll have to get back to you on that one.
So just to recap, we are leasing, the mud lot is this whole table, and we are leasing this much of it from the university to put a storage building on.
Correct.
That the Bureau of Mines is paying for, and they're gonna be the tenant of it.
Correct.
We're just the middleman that's doing all the paperwork.
Yep.
Got it. Because of our lease that requires that we have to provide.
Correct.
Got it.
And our procurement processes are a lot more streamlined than the Bureau of Mines. It would take the Bureau of Mines 2 or 3 years to get it done, whereas we can get it done.
okay, that makes sense then.
We
Yeah,
can get
I
it done in
see
6
that.
months.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good with that?
I need to ask, I don't understand right now. Because, I mean, then. Insurance. City of Frostburg's the tenant, the City of Frostburg's then needing to provide insurance. But in theory, when we renegotiate the lease with NBE, we're going to say, we've provided this additional asset to you, and this additional cost is being incurred by the city, so therefore, the lease needs to go up by X amount.
To cover the insurance that we have to pay for.
Yes.
Correct.
What's the size of this building approximately?
38 by 48.
Okay.
It'll be a pole building, so.
A pole building with electric,
Yeah.
that's it. It's not a huge expense.
Only up to 50 degrees, if you think we're freezing.
And we wouldn't insure the contents of the building, just the
No,
building itself?
no, absolutely not.
Okay. Okay.
They can buy their own insurance for that.
Yeah. Renters.
So, the lease that is provided as an attachment to the agenda, I don't have Michael Cohen's final approval on, but it's gone back and forth between him and one of the AGs for 12 months. We need to update the mayor. So, I don't know that Michael's gonna have any additional changes, but it might be slightly different over a few sentences between now and next week.
Okay.
So, sorry. Okay.
All right. We good with that then? Anything else on H? Item I.
Frostburg First is having their cider crawl in conjunction with Fall in Love with Frostburg, in conjunction with
Pumpkin festival.
the Pumpkin Festival, also on the same day as the Cars and Coffee Cruisin' and the Child Care Center ribbon cutting.
Goodness gracious.
Get your coffee early that morning. There may be champagne at 4:15 at the Child Care Center. But anyway, like many of the Frostburg First events, they're asking for a temporary repeal of the open container law from 11 to 4. So, 11 to 5, thank you.
I have no problem
Sorry.
with that at all.
Okay, so that'll be a resolution as well.
Piece of cake.
And they'll have the same rules as no glass, okay.
And they don't publicly advertise it either,
Yeah.
so it doesn't turn into a full-on bar crawl.
Item J.
At last month's council meeting, the zoning ordinance regarding body art studios was introduced on first reading, and the September 17th council meeting was set as the advertised public hearing. The zoning ordinance stipulates how a amendment needs to be advertised in the paper, and the paper did not run the ad as requested. So I will put it on the agenda that the public hearing will occur in October in conjunction with these other ordinance public hearings. But the day that I had it running was the last possible day it could run, so I didn't have time to,
Run it again.
to ask again. So I apologize for that, but we'll make sure that gets in there for the October meeting.
Anything else?
It'll just be ordinance day.
That's right. We might have to order pizza that day. Okay, moving on then. Item 4, other discussion items. Update from Frostburg First, bylaws.
All right. So in 2014, a letter was issued from the mayor and council and city administrator stipulating that in order for Frostburg First to receive hotel motel funding in the amount that they do, the board of Frostburg First was to reserve 2 seats on their board for the city of Frostburg as for voting members. One for community development staff, the other for a city council person. This letter was dated December 22nd, 2014. So that was almost 10 years ago. I mean, Frostburg first immediately updated the bylaws to include that provision. And it has been that way up until 3 or 4 years ago. At this time, the city council seat is not filled and has not been filled, for those several years. So I'm also on the board advisory committee, and we're doing some bylaw updates. The bylaws haven't been updated since 2018. So one of the items that the rest of the board asked me to come to you all about is, one, would you like a voting seat reserved for a city council member? Or an alternative is, we could do a bylaw amendment that states that a city council member has the first right of refusal for a board seat. So whenever it comes time for elections, that's typically elections are in May, and official appointment to the board is in June. We would come to the council in May every year to say, would one of you like to fill this seat? And if none of the council people would like to fill that seat, then it would just be offered to another member at large.
A lot has changed. Donnie left, so he was the only one around for the 2014 time frame, and it was a challenging time between the city and Frostburg first. A lot has changed since then. They're significant, and probably the most notable, other than the relationship, is they're significantly more financially independent than they once were. The city used to provide over half of their funding, and now it's maybe 20%. So they've been very successful in obtaining grants and so forth and so on. So I don't have a strong feeling either way.
So to clarify, you would still remain on the board in your capacity that you're in now?
I've been appointed as the community development representative.
Right, okay.
You all certainly could appoint someone else in my department to do that.
But a member of city staff would still?
A member of community development
Yes.
staff. That's what
Okay.
this letter stipulates.
Okay.
So yes, if you all are agreeable, I would love to remain the community development contact person on the board. And then the other seat is for a city council person. So we can leave the wording as is, where two representatives of the city of Frostburg, or we can say one city staff representative, the first right of refusal offered to a city council member.
How many members of the board are there total?
That's something that's also getting adjusted. At this time, it's between 9 and 15. We're reducing that number, just, it's hard to make quorum. We've got, up until a couple months ago, we had all 15 seats filled, but it's mostly by business owners who aren't able to attend the meetings, and it just has made it really difficult to make quorum. So that's another bylaw amendment that we're considering. None of these have gone into effect at all. We're just discussing at this time.
Well, if we're reducing the overall number, then the one person that we have there, your voice would carry more for, a board of 5 than of 15, or 7, whatever, so. I mean, I'm okay with the right of refusal, or if we wanted to say a city council member could serve ex officio, I mean, that would be, any of those would be fine. I'm okay with any of that.
Okay. And there are other opportunities for participation. There is also an advisory committee that is reserved for not necessarily board members to serve on, but community members, council people, other stakeholders in the community who wanted to have more of a say in the direction of the organization. So there are other opportunities for council person participation on the board without having to make that commitment to a monthly meeting and service on committees and things like that.
And you still have the power over money if you're not happy with how things are going. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So would you like me to include the language that states first right of refusal for a council person,
Yeah.
just
Yes.
so that the option's there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I will proceed accordingly. Thank you.
Next up is the wish list. So the ARPA wish list.
So it's pretty much the same list as we presented before. We added the rec UTV with the plow. And so that total number went down. We went forward with the street sweeper. We have that ordered. And we're moving forward with the design right now for the Braddock Estates draining project. And then, so I subtracted the 30,000 that we estimated that to be. So that leaves us with 265 when considering the salt facility and parking lot change orders. And those are kind of what we were thinking, but I left some spaces open if you want to add anything.
So the 265 does or does not reflect the change order that we just talked about in D?
It does reflect.
It does reflect that,
Yes.
okay. Okay.
What would be really helpful today is to have these prioritized from your number one priority to your lowest priority. And so that staff can then make sure that we are able to execute all of the projects that you want to be completed by at least ordering or getting under contract by December 31st. I'm concerned that if we keep coming back to you, we're going to end up in a situation that we don't obligate all of the money in a timely fashion. A couple comments. I know those two sidewalk repair projects are large numbers, and that is just a pie in the sky guesstimate at this point. So,
Well, to put it in perspective, that $100,000 change order for the retaining wall we asked for phase 10A. Now granted, half of that cost is in the actual retaining wall, but the other half of that cost is sidewalk, and the length of that sidewalk, $50,000, gets you from Nancy Grasnick at Mountain Bridge to the end of the tennis court.
Right.
So use that as a,
Probably, maybe 100 feet.
and the other thing is, Bell's Lane is a pretty significant project that we're looking at, and maybe, Hayden gets bids on that and it ends up being $200,000, and we just know that's not even doable. So in that case, it would allow us to move on to other projects. The Water Street here, Park Street along the community center, like maybe that could be piecemeal, that we could do just Park Street right now and worry about water later.
Well, one of the things that you and I talked about the other day is there are probably other avenues to pursue funding for that, safe routes to school or anything like that. So I think if we were going to do either of the sidewalk repairs, I think Bell's Lane would be the higher of the two, because we said there are probably alternates for the Water Street.
Yeah. The Frostburg Fire Department sign, that includes the structure and a digital LED sign that we could change the messaging to. I know I presented that a while back.
Yeah, you said if we, as a city, we could put things on there too.
Correct.
So,
Commissioner Grove, I think, has thrown out the idea of cost sharing in that.
Maybe if we bought the sign, the fire department could do the structure that the sign would sit in, and maybe could even get that donated from somebody who knew how to do that type of work.
Whatever.
But I think that would be a good project, because it benefits the city, it benefits the fire department, it benefits the citizens, that you can put messages out there on anything that's happening, road closures, anything. There'd be a lot of benefits to having that sign there.
And I mean, when there's been significant water line breaks down on Grant Street and stuff, like being able to effectively communicate with people other than Facebook, I feel like that sign's more effective than the radio.
Well, exactly. Many people comment on what's on the sign, at least to me.
And to clarify, the 40,000 was just for the signboard.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah, it
that's,
doesn't include the structure.
Oh,
And that
so
was a
that's-
quote that was back in
that's
May.
just the LED sign.
So
Okay.
it could have gone up by now, but that's the latest quote that we had on that.
Okay. And then the one thing that's been added since last month is the UTV for the rec department. That's a little probably high of a number, but that would be a, no, we're not getting the Cadillac version.
I was gonna say, that's probably the opposite of high.
There's a Cadillac version for $76,000 that I put my foot down on. We're not buying Corvettes here. We're buying like,
Honda Civics.
yes. Maybe not a Geo Metro, but
Honda Civics are reliable.
That's right. They're cost effective and they're reliable.
so this is a Bobcat utility vehicle, but enclosed cab, but small, with a plow and a snow blower attachment.
It does not have a snowplow attachment. You wouldn't.
That's what I didn't think. Okay, so it's just a plow. So it's
So
like $26,000.
Where do we anticipate using this?
This would be in this would be in the parking lot at the child care center that's small. This would be at the new parking lot right here. This would be this parking lot as needed. The rec department maintains all of these parking lots and snow events. The new one with the bio retention and stuff is tight. Once those solar canopies are added, it will be tighter.
It would be impossible to get a truck in there.
So there's options of tearing everything out with a 3/4 ton or 1 ton truck with a plow on it, ripping out all the curb stops. Or option 2 is they bring the skid loader out with the bucket and the chains on the tires, destroy all of our new asphalt. Or option 3 would be purchase this reasonably priced UTV. Option 4 would be the Cadillac Escalade at $76,000.
Now, with that being, it's not even for my department, so I have no skin in the game. But that, to their defense, that the Cadillac is the Swiss Army knife. There's way more to it than the $35,000 one. The $35,000 one is a mini snowplow. The Cadillac is a snowplow, a loader, a snow blower, a forklift, X, Y, and Z. So just for
If
their.
you buy the extra attachments though.
That are all $15,000 a piece.
Just saying. Like I said, I got no skin in the game. I don't care. It's not for my
This is on top
department.
of the 76?
Yes.
But
It's not a Swiss Army knife unless you get everything else.
So the 76 includes just the plow. It wouldn't include
It
the
includes
street sweeper.
bucket, plow, and the hydraulic package, which is the important part. The only thing it wouldn't include would be the snow blower, which you probably also, you would want. So 76,000 covered everything but the snow blower. Just saying, to be transparent, I
Okay, well,
reviewed the quotes.
We'll take your transite water line
Does it
replacement off.
drive itself too? or-
That's the one that I think should go to the top, the transit water line.
Well, another other comment. The first one there, the street light and the community center masonry work, those are things that are gonna have to happen in the next year.
Okay.
Like, those are getting real close. So just that, you might wanna consider leaving those at the top, because the water line, it could be good in perpetuity for another 100 years. But they're just brittle and they have a tendency to crack and break.
The masonry work at the community center, is it cosmetic or is it structural?
Structural.
Okay.
Could the water fund absorb the $10,000? Okay, so are you okay if that gets crossed off?
That's
How
for
much
meters.
is your yard waste site, Hayden?
Should be
That's for
free.
the device that they're using the
I
truck.
think we can do everything ourselves.
The extra, the
Okay.
purchase of the extra one, that's what.
Free, let's move that to the top.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll cross off yard waste.
I'm sorry, I missed what you just said. What'd you say?
I had brought up the idea, we need to make a yard waste site, and we have city property that we should be able to do it on. I put it on this list just in case there was the possibility of having to spend a little bit of money, but I'm thinking we should be able to self-perform all the work and not really have to buy anything for it.
Where do you want it?
We own a square chunk of property west of Finzel, that actually has an access road through it, and a big open spot right in the front of the property. We should be able to take our truck in, dump it, and compost the yard waste.
Okay.
Oh, we could wait another 20 years for Arden Hall to build his.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
So with, next to the rec UTV, you can either write 26,000 or 76,000. And I'll let you make that decision. I'm not gonna be the bad guy anymore.
Like I said, it's not my piece of equipment, but they're two very different things.
how about we go with the 26, and in return, I'll let you cut down every tree on Center Street.
You got me.
There could be another option. If you wanted to go with the Cadillac, we could look at other brands, not the Bobcat version, but see if there's something equivalent and.
Yeah, the Bobcat is just one thing. I mean, you could look at John Deere, you could look at Case, you could look at Yanmar.
No, John Deere.
I agree with that.
As long as you're on the state bid
Just add
website, you get
another
state pricing
50%
for it.
to
So-
the price if it's green.
If the primary function of this is gonna be to plow the small parking lots, that's all we needed to do.
The small one would do.
That's all
If
we
you want my take on it, if we're gonna spend money on something, we will find a use for it more than 4 months out of the year.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, pretty probably.
And,
Yeah, we will, I guarantee.
and oftentimes, if you get any more than 6 inches of snow in these parking lots, you're piling up a lot of snow, and you can't, if you're just pushing, you are losing all your parking spaces. If you have that loader bucket that you can lift and dump, like they do with the skid loader in this lot, it does free up parking space. It does actually effectively remove the snow, or the snow blower blowing it into
Into
the
the back of
ditch,
the dump truck.
or into the truck, yeah. So, the plow would work, but if you get any significant snow, you're going to be losing parking spaces at a pretty fast rate. Or then you bring out the loader, or you bring out the skid loader anyway after the fact, so.
Like I said, it's not for my department, not my pig, not my farm, but if you're gonna spend $35,000 on something that you're gonna use 4 months out of the year, why not spend $76,000 on something that you can use all year? That's just my 2 cents.
It does have it does have like a little bed on it with a dump bed, so it has, it's not like a Polaris RZR side by side, it's truly a utility vehicle, so,
Want to see if there are others that kind of have multi-functions that are not.
Yeah.
So let me, just one more piece of context about looking at the brands, is Bobcat, that original price yesterday, just them speccing it out as a consumer, was $94,000. And it came back at that rate at the state bid price, because Bobcat has a lot of the state bid contract. So I don't know that you'll get a discount of that magnitude with anyone else. But, I mean, we can certainly look into it.
Yeah, or at other comparable options.
So we definitely want to move forward with a UTV of sorts. And then we can provide you with more information on some different pricing options to make the final decision if you want to go with the 26 or the higher.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so, because, I mean, we put all this money into the new parking lot, and,
Right, and there's no sense tearing it up and then we
Yeah.
repave it again 2 years from now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Is
so,
that number 3 then?
what did we, or have we decided about either of the sidewalks things? I think we said no on the water and park.
The tricky one with, just speaking off the top of my head, the tricky one with allotting a contract of that size, it's probably gonna be tough to get it designed and built with our timeline.
Before winter.
But it just has to be,
I don't think, Bell's Lane we might need to design,
Yeah.
but water and park could just be field engineered, just if you're just replacing sidewalks.
Is Bell's Lane both sides or just one side?
just one side, no.
It'll become one side. Right
Oh,
now-
right, we talked about that,
Yeah.
widening the, because they already park there anyway.
Yeah.
And that sidewalk is just horrible.
Yeah, it kind of goes down half the street and then you cross over to the other half and then people park on it, so. Bell's Lane, we would run the sidewalk down one side and then turn the rest into asphalt.
Down the left side.
Yeah, or whichever one was easier to get easements on.
Okay.
Or where the existing easements were, I guess.
So,
That one might have to be put off,
Okay.
but it should be a higher priority in the coming budget.
it's within 2 miles of Bell Elementary, so you could apply for safe routes to school, and that's 70. It'll make the project more expensive, but if you get 75% funding, and it'll take 100 years to get done, but it will, 25% of a more expensive project's still gonna be better than 100% of a.
So you think we could potentially get funding for both of those sidewalks through safe routes?
We've done it before.
With Water and Park where it's at grade, like that could be field engineered. Like
Yeah.
State Highway, when they replaced the sidewalks on Main Street, they just had a field engineer that's making, and like sidewalk builders know how to build sidewalks, especially when they're flat. You don't need to have plans, but when you use safe routes to school, you have to have plans. So, I don't know, 8 years ago when we did this section of Broadway across from Bell Elementary, that was like $80,000 project, so you were sitting done because of having to pay for design, and then da-da-da-da-da. So yes, in theory, both projects could be safe routes to school eligible. Potentially, yeah, it's just, I don't know what the right answer is.
I guess my take on it is, Bell's Lane sidewalk would probably need to be designed by an engineer. There's gonna be holdups with easements. And obviously there's a sidewalk component, a demolition component, and then a paving component. So it might be easier to push that one to a safe routes to school, do that work, and then lump it in with our paving project and just pave it under our yearly paving bid next year, 2 years. Like to Elizabeth, so we might just wanna, my take on it is nix that one out of this, nix that 110 for this one. The sidewalk repairs on Park and Water, I think are very reasonable because we can go out there tomorrow, I can have a couple contractors meet me on site and say, hey, how much to repair this curb? Give me a quote, and I'll get 3 quotes, and the cheapest one, we can just say, all right, have at it. That can turn over a lot quicker, and presumably be cheaper than the Bell's Lane stuff will be, because there's more paperwork with Bell's Lane.
Would we then buy materials because we can only, it's under 25,000?
Okay, so if we knock off both of the paving contracts and assume everything else, we've still only spent $195,000, so we've got 70 to go.
So you could just do $70,000 worth of sidewalk,
Yeah.
prioritize the worst
Section.
sections. Cause that, I mean, again, that number,
Well, wait, that number is assuming that the UTV is 35.
okay.
So knock another, say we go with the 70-something, so knock another 40 off of that, so that gets you to 155 that remains. No, wait, that's not right. 235, so we've got 30,000 left.
Hayden, would you prioritize the sidewalks on Water and Park over the transite water line replacement or no?
I would, yeah. Yeah, like I said, that transite water line, it could be good for another 100 years, or it could blow out tomorrow. But I'm confident that it should be fine. But confident that it will be fine for the foreseeable future. Whereas the sidewalks are
For 6
deteriorating.
months till it happens, then we have to get it.
Yeah. Whereas the sidewalks are getting pretty bad.
So if we took out both of the potential sidewalk projects here just temporarily, everything else, we assume that the UTV comes in at 75 instead of 35. That puts our total expenses so far at 235, so we've got 30,000 left. Give or take. Call it 25, because the UTV is going to be more than that.
I think community center.
Signage.
Yeah, I took the two I took the 2 sidewalks out and added everything else. So call it 240, so that leaves 25,000.
I mean, we can we can spend $25,000 in tools real quick.
There's no doubt.
Yeah, at the end, if we get to, I'm saying if we get to the end of the year, it's December 1st, and we're like, crap, we gotta have this last little bit of money spent, we can start cranking away on tools really quickly.
Would you wanna do $20,000 worth of sidewalk repairs, or?
Well,
So, and you didn't cross off, yeah, you did, okay. So,
no, I didn't. Wait, I did it completely wrong. I only took out the paving things. I didn't take everything else out. What do you have?
so if you took out the radio read and the 2 sidewalks, that leaves you at 225. If you took off the transite water line and prioritized that would leave you $90,000. If you prioritize sidewalks over the transite water line, that would leave you $90,000 for sidewalks.
So we could almost do one of those.
Yeah, and I mean, again, 110,000 just,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a very rough estimate.
and that's including 75 for the UTV.
All right, so let's rewrite. So we're saying street lighting is a yes. The control box for the street lights is a yes.
Yeah.
So 1 and 2 then?
1 and 2.
priority.
The masonry work is yes. The radio meters
No.
was a no. The transite line is a no. Both of the paving contracts are no right now. The signboard is a yes. The UTV at approximately 75,000 is a yes. So just those 4. 25, 40, 80, 75.
Still
155, so yeah, that leaves 90. Okay.
So then the next priority would be the water and park for sidewalks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this will be a resolution that says these projects are approved for ARPA funding. We don't assign, and then there'll be a resolution for the street lighting to authorize Stevens Electric to do that. And there'll be a resolution to purchase that UTV. The masonry work won't need a resolution if it comes in at that price.
The signboard will need one.
The signboard, yeah, we need to figure that out. I need to just get an updated information from the fire department and make sure that they can,
They're meeting tonight. I'll make sure it gets brought up there.
okay. We'll figure that one out. That that resolution can get pushed till October to figure it out, because it's so long before. So we'll obligate those ARPA funds and then do resolutions to move forward on a couple of them, if that sounds reasonable.
Okay.
And then, once we get all that hashed out, and I won't, in the ARPA resolution, we generally don't assign number values, so if it goes up or down a little bit, it doesn't mess with your resolutions.
Okay.
Sound reasonable?
We good on that?
Yeah.
Next item C, the roundabout.
Okay. So, I gave you at council meeting, I think back in July, the roundabout update that staff was recommending that we no longer held ARPA money in a contingency for the construction of the roundabout. So since then, I've had conversations with Department of Planning that manages the ARC money for Maryland, Allegheny County. It's been very invested in the Center Street project, but also the roundabout project that also prioritizes ARC project, as well as Tri-County Council, that they prioritize the ARC projects within the 3-county region. So I've had all those conversations, and everyone is understanding that the city can't potentially pursue the roundabout project at this time. However, when communicating that with State Highway District 6, they were very disappointed to hear that we would not be able to proceed with the project. So what they did is they took the plans as they are right now, and they did their own engineering cost estimates. We have about $3 million in construction funds that the engineering team has assured Hayden that we have enough money to construct, and then State Highway did their estimations and said it's going to be $4 to $5 million. So that gives us confidence that it was the right recommendation to pause the project right now. However, Hayden and I, a couple weeks ago, did go down and meet with several folks from District 6 at State Highway, and they have want to do two things. A, go back to our engineer who asked us for an additional $180,000 for design and try to negotiate that to a reasonable number.
Which they're gonna do that. State highway rules or something.
Because it's a state highway consultant. It is not our consultant, it's a state highway consultant that we hired. And the last time we gave them additional money, that was supposed to get us through to bidding, and it did not. And we spent a lot of ARC money on design. B, they are going to look, so State Highway has faced major budget cuts from the state of Maryland. However, there's some federal money that they are looking into on our behalf that they could acquire to help complete this project. So no action right now, but I just wanted to give you an update that as long as everyone is agreeable, we're not just going to put the plans on the shelf and forget about it. We will continue to see what we can do without any significant contributions of city cash to continue to move the project forward. Does that sound reasonable?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The food pantry.
Good news there. So many months ago, the mayor and council approved purchasing the lot at the corner of Water and
Park Lane.
Park, yes. Across from Kenny's Market, Kenny's Grocery, a catty corner from it, for $13,000. That still has not happened because of estate issues that the Kenny family has been working diligently on. Now it's just a matter of things being tied up between a courthouse in Virginia and our courthouse, is my understanding of it. However, in the meantime, the city did apply for $20,000 of Rocky Gap slot money revenue and got it. So the city's already received that money towards the construction of the project. So that reduced the ARPA contribution to that project. So just wanted to give you that update that as soon as we're able to close on the project, close on the property, we'd be able to move forward with construction. And that would be self-constructed by Parks and Rec. It would just be material costs. So $20,000 certainly helps.
Absolutely.
I might have missed it. Did you say there's an estimate as to when all the stuff?
I'm hoping, I texted with Craig Kenny last week, and he said the guy at our courthouse doesn't know what's taking so long. So I'm going to check in with J.C. Duncan, who was helping Craig, and or call down to the courthouse and see if the transfer has happened. Because he gave, it's all been submitted, so just don't know what's happening. But I think, we'll be in a good position to know that we'll be taking title of the property and closing on the property, that we can at least go and buy the materials before December 31st, or order the trusses or what have you. Spend the ARPA money allocated. So. Okay.
Another fun one, the noise ordinance, or potential for a noise ordinance.
So we've, I spoke, so this is kind of a twofold thing. Let me bring up the city code here. Right now, our noise ordinance only applies to music, more or less. It doesn't apply to people hollering at each other at 2 in the morning. It doesn't, instances that have come up. A generator running 24/7, people screaming at each other,
Using their leaf blower
Oh.
at 7 AM.
Somebody using their leaf blower at 4 AM because they really made their neighbor mad. So, one suggestion, so there's like a very fine line of being reasonable, but then also, you know, a roofing contractor starts at 6:45 AM. We don't want the police called because it was 15 minutes before 7 AM. So, you know, that's reasonable, but, you know, me screaming at Bethany at 4 in the morning, or, you know, doing whatever, not appropriate if you're disturbing your neighbors. The other comment is like, bands at bars or Hoffman can be heard all over town just because of the way sound travels. So, but it's I spoke to Chief Costello and Sergeant Curry today. They're both in Ocean City at the Chiefs Conference. And the restriction to only music does create a problem when there actually is like a disruption of the peace in terms of noise. So this is kind of coming from the code enforcement side with Jay Hovatter dealing with some generators being run, as well as the police being able to enforce sound, loud things between the 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. So it's something I would recommend that we consider looking at. I do not have anything drafted for you. I wanted to get your general feedback if you were okay with me working with the police department and Michael Cohen on preparing a more noise ordinance. The second thing is incessant dog barking. That is a complaint that we can't enforce. If someone sets their dog out in their chain link fence from 7 in the morning until 11 in the morning every day, and that dog barks at the squirrel in the tree all day, all morning, there's nothing we can do about it right now. There are other jurisdictions that have incessant dog barking ordinances, so it's not like this is coming out of, you know, the first time this has ever been done. But that's an additional component to the noise ordinance that I wanted to see how you felt about it.
Put that dog in a slammer.
So I'm not against that, but I would be curious how we would define, like, how do you define the word incessant? How do you define the word prolonged?
Yeah, and I
Is it good to bark for an hour? That's
Right.
it.
3 barks per minute per some kind of equation.
Yeah.
So there are examples, I don't have them with me, but it's something that, you know, we could look at that Chief and Nathan would think might be enforceable, and then go from there and prepare something if you're at least willing to consider that. And of course, if you don't like it, it can be stricken from anything that's proposed. But there are Allegheny County, because they run the animal shelter, you know, however they contract with them to do that. But they're not responding to things like that unless it's animal abuse or neglect. It's not going to elicit a response. So in terms of quality of life for your other residents that don't have the dog that's barking, it would be up to us to come up with an ordinance to enforce. So.
It doesn't hurt to ask, yeah. Get with chief and get with Michael and see
Well,
if they can come up
and
with
the
some
chief
language.
can check with other communities, other jurisdictions and see if they have something and how they define
Yeah.
how long the
For
dog can
example, do you
bark.
know offhand, and no is acceptable, but do you know offhand, like, does Cumberland have anything?
I don't think so,
Okay,
but there's other jurisdictions in Maryland that do.
okay.
Okay,
It
so,
doesn't hurt to ask.
all right, so you're good with us kind of exploring that, working on
Yeah.
something that's more enforceable and better protects the people that enjoy some quiet.
All right, 2 more, and they're getting even more controversial. Cardboard box abuse.
So I just put this on the agenda to make you aware. It's a point of frustration internally. We've put the 4 cardboard box recycling places in various parts throughout the town. So then what was happening is people weren't breaking down their boxes, lifting up the lid to the dumpsters. The dumpsters were filling up in minutes, it seemed like, because no one breaks down their boxes. And then people were throwing all their boxes around the dumpster. So then Hayden and Emily contacted Bergmeyer's and asked them to put locks on the dumpsters, their locks, to prevent that from happening. And now people are just breaking the locks off to be able to throw. So despite what seems to be a good intention of recycling, they're vandalizing city property instead, or, what the city's paying for. So it's just frustrating. I don't know what to do, but I'm just,
Security cameras, isn't
I mean,
it?
Well, that's what I said. I mean, well, I'll move that dumpster to this parking lot, and they can watch it from dispatch.
You can get a camera that will send stuff right to an app on your phone, or,
I mean, would it
we've
be,
got some other interesting acts in the parks. I guess we could catch, we could catch dumpster vandalism in the parks.
would it be a waste of time to have signs made that say, break your boxes down, this is it, I mean,
they're on there.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, they're posted on there.
And the
Okay.
cost has gone up too,
Mhm.
so is it still worthwhile?
Yeah, it's not cheap. So, if you want my opinion, I'd like to get rid of them. They frustrate the crap out of me. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a worthwhile venture. But my people are tired of dealing with them.
Yeah, maybe we could put them in one place, put them all in the same area, that way we can keep an eye on them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Keep the same number, but have them all
Keep 'em all
together and
yes.
have one camera.
Or just say
Yeah,
the
any
city of
ideas?
Frostburg ones at the Longview landfill.
We could probably, if we're gonna do that, we could probably even choke it down to 2 dumpsters, because I can't imagine,
So
We
where
can
are
even
they?
get
There's
2
Mount
pickups
Pleasant
a
Street,
week.
there's one at Glendenning, where are the other 2?
dog
Down
park.
the
Dog park.
And community park by the pool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and even if we go down to 2, we put them together, then
Mhm.
we could get more pickups if we had to,
Mhm.
twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
So one on the east side of town and one on the west side.
Well, if you were gonna put them all together for the sake of vandalism, I would just have 2 dumpsters in one central
One
location.
location.
And cut down to 2 from 4, and just have those 2 in one spot. 'Cause
How often do they get picked up?
once a week. Yeah, and by the end of that week, they're usually
Would you
full.
put them down in the, either the pool parking lot or
Probably.
at Christmas before we had them in the Parks and Rec parking lot?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple options. We could look at the pool. The only thing is with the pool in the wintertime, that's where we store snow. And so that gets filled up a little bit.
Well, if we were to put them out by the rec building, out by the Little League, we could actually mount a camera
On the
on the rec building
Yeah.
and be able to watch them.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be blunt. This is a lot of way to put makeup on a pig. A lot of ways to put makeup on a pig. This is
Lipstick.
lipstick on a pig. Yeah,
Yeah.
my brain is fried. I think,
You just wouldn't get rid of them.
yeah, it's a lot. And if we start adding stuff to it, it just feels like a lot of money and time for a pain in the butt, if I'm just being blunt.
If we totally get rid of them though, isn't it gonna, well, the landfill, but
Yeah.
the people that live, I mean, like, I use the one at Mount Pleasant Street, for example. I'm probably not driving all the way there. I mean, it's gonna increase trash pickup costs. People are just gonna throw things away that they would normally recycle.
I don't want to get rid of them.
Well, and I would think the same thing, as much as you might want to get rid of them, obviously they are being used a lot. So if we take them out,
I think at this point,
Well, and that's a public facing thing that somebody's gonna come and say, of all the problems that we have and that this is the one thing they decided to get rid of.
I think at this point they have to stay, but I think they can stay in a different capacity.
Yeah.
Which might be trying necking them down to 2 and putting those 2 in one spot. But like you said, if it's not close to your home, you're probably not going to use it. But the amount of money that we are saving in less cardboard per truck is not made up for in just the cost of the dumpsters. It's like $5 grand a year for all 4 dumpsters. I'm not saving $5 grand a year at the landfill in not having cardboard, if that makes sense. Because the way the landfill works is all on weight. Cardboard's not that heavy. So, I think, let me wrap my mind around it, figure out where I can take 2 of them, put them in a central spot where they're visible. That's not going to be like out here. See what Bergmeyer says, and just see if maybe they might have had experience with this in the past and ways around it.
Yeah.
And then worst case scenario, if that doesn't work, we can go back to 4. I mean,
Electrify the law.
I was just gonna say that. No, I mean,
Or some kind of sensor goes off, you know, and it just
Or yes,
blows
yeah,
up.
Or like,
Like an alarm going off.
We could
Just
just
like
say
something
there
that goes, what are you doing?
what do they call them? Like the little turtles that they put on an expensive package in like Lowe's, those little green things.
Or the dye that they put in the bags.
Yeah.
oh, the bank, yeah.
so if everyone's okay, Hayden can just kind of keep you up to date on his progress via email.
Yes, that's fine.
Interesting. Like I said, at this point, we can't give up on them. I think that in some capacity they have to stay. But we can try different avenues to make them less susceptible to vandalism.
Some people are just so determined not to break down
Yeah,
their damn
and you
boxes.
cannot tell me that it was easier to
Yeah.
break that log bar than it was to break down your cardboard. I mean, come on.
All right, last one. Halloween.
Trick or treating, that's not controversial.
So, the mayor and council always set the day of official trick or treating. Halloween is on Thursday, the 31st this year. The parade is on Tuesday, the 29th. I would recommend that trick or treating be on Thursday, the 31st.
I thought we had decided for sure from now on we were gonna have trick or treating on Halloween.
Okay, well, if
Yeah.
you never want me to bring this up again, I won't.
That works for me.
Okay. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
we'll put that out. That was easy. That is all I have. I failed to add anything from the mayor and council or Hayden for the good of the order.
we don't want to talk to Hayden. He's very negative.
I'm good. I got all my
There's
stuff
something,
out.
I think we brought something, we talked about this sometime in the past, and I can't remember how we left it, but caps for the street lights to, so that the light goes down and not up into the sky.
I don't know about the caps. There are shields that they put inside that shield it out onto the street, not into the houses. And we will install those upon request from a homeowner. We've also installed dimmers. All the new ones have dimmers, so they're at like 60% instead of 100%. I'm not familiar with the caps for the dark sky stuff.
Something we could look into. I don't have no idea how much they cost or anything. And it also depends on the design of the lights.
My preference, if I had a gazillion dollars, would be to get rid of all of these old-fashioned looking lights and do modern ones that put the light down on the street and not into people's windows or the sky, but the $1 million, $5 million is the limiting factor there, so. I saw there's, I was watching some movie or show that was based in Europe somewhere, and they had these really neat street lights that, if this is the sidewalk and that's the street light was here and it came up real high and shone light down here over the street, and then it had lower ones here that shone light out over the sidewalk, but they only were down. And they were, they're very sleek and modern, but very efficient and light the public safety without all the light pollution. So.
Good design.
So if anyone hits the lottery,
I was just
Yeah.
Powerball's 800 and some million.
fund the cost for a relighting project. We could sell all these old ones on eBay,
Really, yeah.
so gov deals.
So that would probably cause the ruckus to, meet their town.
Anything else, Commissioner? Commissioner?
Good.
Commissioner?
Good.
Anything else? Meeting's adjourned.